Hey everyone, thanks for coming back and listening in to our Accountant Showcase series. Uh, Always with the idea of bringing awareness to the profession. And today we have an awesome guest with us, the principal at HaydenRock Solutions, Paul Latham. Paul, thanks for taking time out this morning to do this. How's everything going? Tell us a little about yourself.
Hi, Chris. Yeah, thanks for having me on. Well, as you can probably tell, I'm English. I was going to say I was a chartered accountant. I actually still am a chartered accountant. I have a background in accounting in that I became a chartered accountant back in the 1980s. I eventually built an accounting firm. In the 80s, early 90s, it was a pretty traditional accounting firm, but somewhere around about, I don't know, 92, 93, I think it was, the Institute of Accountants in the UK produced a report, a big, thick report, but basically said, what you do is increasingly becoming a commodity, and it's going to, just get harder and harder for you unless you start adding value to your clients. And I remember sitting around a boardroom table with my other partners at that time, and we said, let's not do that. And essentially, we completely reconfigured our accounting business from being what I call a backward-looking traditional accountant to becoming a forward-looking, proactive, value-adding accountant. And that's a really quick, easy thing to say, but it took a lot of work. But 8 years later, we sold our accounting business for, I think it was, well, in US dollar terms, $45 million. And the reason we attracted that value was because we were 80% of our revenue was non-traditional, forward-looking, planning type services, not the accounts, tax returns, looking backwards stuff. So that's sort of my background. And I don't know if you want me then to go on to talk about how it sort of moved in the US, but I'll let you chip in at this point.
Well, that's an awesome story, and I find that there's similar folks who started that way, started that traditional practice, and realized there's got to be a better way to do this. And you did it, right? Now you're helping out the accounting world in doing that. But let's go even a step back. How did you why become a CPA, right? How did you get into the industry? Was it prevalent within your family? Was it through college? Can you tell us how you got into the industry?
Yeah, okay. I mean, I'm not sure you want to broadcast this, but number one, it had nothing to do with my family. I basically went to college, finished. I did a degree in economics. You don't have to do, in the UK, you don't have to do accounting to become an accountant.
Right.
By the way, I think is a big positive in the UK in that you get a wider range of people entering the profession with different backgrounds, but nonetheless. But the bottom line was I lived in a place, the middle of the country, the Midlands of England. And the reason I became an accountant was because my girlfriend became my wife. She was doing a postgraduate course in Manchester, which is about 200 miles away. And we decided we were going to live together, and I needed a job, and I needed a job to pay the rent. And I had about 3 days. And there's a really long story, but you don't want to do it here. But I had about 3 days to get a job. Otherwise, I couldn't pay the rent. Wow. And I was offered to become an accountant, and I had literally no intention of being an accountant. But I thought, okay, this will do for now. And I sort of got into it, and there was exams and things. And I sort of thought, okay, well, I may as well at least pass some of those exams. And 2 or 3 years later, I had passed those exams. And then I thought, actually, I'm quite good at this. And so somewhere along the way, I evolved. And there's a really long story behind all that as well, which is actually quite amusing, but probably not suitable for a podcast or a webinar, I should say. But yeah, I had literally no intention of being an accountant, which is probably some of the reason why I'm not the typical accountant.
Yeah. No, that's an awesome story. Typically, I hear, it's within their family or someone had an impact within their life. I mean, in your instance, you're like, okay, this is a job, let's do it. And
I needed to pay the rent.
Yeah. Hey.
And the really interesting story was I actually went into that particular interview with a mindset of, I've really got to get this job. And again, without going through all the questions, I went in that interview, I was super assertive. and sort of super confident and, super trying to portray myself as perhaps what I wasn't, in fact. At the end of the interview, the guy interviewing me said, to be honest, the job went yesterday, but you interviewed so well, I'm going to create an extra job for you.
Nice.
So,
yeah,
it's complete random fluke, basically.
Yeah. So you applied for a job that wasn't even there, and they created a position for you.
Well, when I applied for it, it was there, but the job had been taken the day before, or the guy, the partner interviewing me had given the job to somebody else, and he was sort of going through the motions to talk to me. And to be fair, I did interview quite well. It was one of my better performances. I can sort of remember one or two of my answers. And he said at the end, he said, actually the job went yesterday, but you've been great, and I'm going to create an extra job.
Yeah, no, I love that. Truly love that story. And so now let's. So then became CPA partner, sold the firm. Now working with CPA firms. So. How have you seen the industry evolve over the last 3 years, and where do you see it going within the next 3 years, in your opinion?
Because obviously you're talking about the US now. So when I came to the US, first of all, it wasn't in my contemplation to work with accountants. After I sold the accounting firm, I did various other things. I took a business public, nothing to do with accountancy. Bought and sold another business, so it wasn't in my contemplation. But so step one, when I got here in 2012, I recognised that the accounting profession here was way like seriously way behind the UK, like more than 20 years behind. And in fact, I say to my colleagues, friends in the UK, I say it's almost like being in a time machine. I feel like I've gone back in time. So it's sort of weird for me, because in a way, the things that are changing currently, I've seen them all before, most of them, with one exception really. And you see, when we did this at Lathams back in the 90s, the major difference with today is what we're doing now, technology. I'll give you for instance, I don't think we got email till 1998, or certainly weren't using it in the accounting firm. The internet, it sort of existed, but not really to any useful extent. So the biggest sort of change between then and now is technology. And I think, and then answering your question specifically, I think the biggest change that's happening in the accounting profession is sort of the widening of the service streams, which allows, to use my term anyway, allows accountants to take advantage of what I call the virtual family office. And so suddenly what you've actually got is this shift through technology to enable accountants to suddenly have greater expertise at their disposal. Obviously in what you do at Entigrity, what we do at HaydenRock, and all sorts of similar things. What that allows the accountant to do is suddenly be at the center of their client's universe and solve their problems, either directly through their own team, but just as likely indirectly through a virtual team of experts. And that's far and away the biggest change. In fact, I always say there's been two massive changes in business in the last quarter century. The biggest is the one I've just mentioned, which is technology and virtual. And the second biggest is really all to do with how you manage people and leadership. It's really relevant to your question, but that area is a huge change. These days, you can't just tell people what to do. You have to create a culture. And I think, if accountants were to do two things, one would be embrace technology, embrace virtual, recognize they're in a great position with their clients to become far more holistic in their service. And secondly, create a culture where it's, not backward looking, but forward looking and adding value.
Yeah, no, spot on. I can relate, because in doing what I do with clients every single day, 4 years ago, I said the word virtual remote, and 50% of my calls would just be done. They just couldn't conceptualize that. And now all of a sudden, everyone has realized, oh, hey, I could hire outside my city, my state, my country, right? And utilize local resources.
Yes.
But it's just to get to that point. You're right. It was just like it's like the turtle and the what's the fast one? The turtle and the hare, tortoise and the hare. It's just the
Yes.
accounting industry was the tortoise the entire time. All other industries were like the hare just sprinting by.
Mm. Yeah.
And who would have thought with the pandemic that happened to push everyone into this environment, making them realize that hey, this has
It's
been here,
easy.
the resources are here. Let's do it. You can do it. Come on. And now,
Not only is it easy, it's better
yeah,
for the clients, and it's actually much more efficient. Whether we're talking here or whether you're talking to a client, you're
yep,
far more efficient and effective with time.
yep,
So it's a huge change. Interestingly, by the way, I tried to this was my one foray into technology back in about, I think it was 1998, 1999, and they just invented this new fangled thing called what do they call it, teleconferencing or something. And in those days the only people that had teleconferencing were great big banks. You went to a bank and they had these big teleconference things, but they were sort of introducing a sort of slightly more accessible version. And I remember looking at how much time we wasted as an accounting firm traveling to and from our clients. And basically it's dead time. And I know you pretend you're working when you're doing that, but it's dead time. And I sort of worked out it would have been cheaper or more efficient for us to give every single client a teleconferencing kit to enable, as long as they were a client. If they left, they'd have to give it back or something. But it would have been cheaper and more effective. And that was 20 odd years ago. And I remember we sort of created a case for it. But it was one of those, we were probably a little bit too far ahead of our time there, and we didn't do it. I think we basically chickened out of it. But now, I mean, what we're doing here is sort of the same equivalent, just so much easier, and it's more efficient, it's more effective, it's better for everybody.
Oh yeah, absolutely. The amount of time that's one of the reasons why I took this position 4 years ago. I used to travel from Brooklyn to Long Island, three and a half hour round trip commute. And I was like, what could I be doing with those three and a half hours every single day? It just didn't make sense. And now it's just brilliant with the technology that's in place. So no, spot on. And the before we wrap up here, so besides working, what does Paul like to do for fun?
What does Paul like to do for fun? Well, I'm English, and so I'm big into soccer. I used to play when I was younger. Obviously, I'm way too old for that now, but I'm big into soccer. And one of the great things actually of living in the US is, well, first of all, the Premier League is accessible in the US. And the other great thing is, I mean, every single game is on. So I never miss now watching my team. Whereas if I was living in the UK, sometimes you couldn't watch because of the broadcasting restrictions. So that's probably my big thing. Although, having said that, I have tried to acclimatize a little to US sports. So I still watch a few of those, like the Patriots and so on. So
ooh, yeah. Yeah, I'm from New York, so Boston. But Boston always wins. It's
all the Red Sox.
All the sports, they win everything all the time. Hey, no, I appreciate you taking time out today and just getting to know a little bit more about you and how you got into this profession. It's an awesome story. Any final thoughts before we leave today?
I think the final thought for the accounting profession is, I mean, I have a sort of phrase, which is, I think accountants are actually in a great place to not just survive, but thrive. But I do think they have to take a leap, and I do think they have to change. And I think if they get stuck in that rut of looking backwards, then their future's pretty bleak. But if they take the leap and look forwards, then they have a fantastic position as the most trusted advisor to, really take that opportunity. So that's my positive thought to end on.
Love it. Awesome. Thanks for your time, Paul. Everyone else, thank you for listening in. We'll be back soon with more guests and talking about Account Showcase. For now, take care. Bye-bye.